All right, fantastic. Well, I'm joined today on another episode of the Insurtech Leadership Podcast by Paul Vauquiez. He is the founder and CEO of Beagle Services. Beagle is a water security company that handles the last mile carriers and homeowners can't figure out on their own, getting leak detection hardware actually installed, monitored, and maintained across every property type and manufacturer. This conversation matters right now because non-weather water damage costs insurers roughly $13 billion a year. Interior water damage accounts for 39% of homeowner claims, and most carriers still treat prevention as a brochure recommendation rather than an operational program. We're going to get into why the installation gap is where loss prevention falls apart, how Paul built the insurance carrier playbook at Flow by Moen before Moen acquired it, and what Beagle's work with carriers like Pure tells us about where the industry is actually headed on loss prevention. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining. So, obviously I give a little bit of background, but maybe just as a starting point, you could share a little bit about your history and how it led to where you are today.
Yes, well, it's not very logical when you find out that I'm actually a California barred litigation attorney, but now I run a multi-state plumbing company.
Yeah,
But what's really fun about that is through the course of some startups that I was involved with, met the founder of Flow Technologies back years before he even started the business. And then we kept in touch. And throughout the growth of that company, I was fortunate enough to be able to help join that team and help scale that ultimately through the acquisition by Moen. And that product is still very prevalent in market as the Flow by Moen valve. Most relevantly for today's business, while I was there, I helped, as you mentioned, build out the insurance path to market for the product. It solves a very known and common problem that insurers have to handle, and that is water non-weather leaks in properties for claims they're paying. And there's a lot of technology in the space that can really help mitigate that damage. So with that, we were looking at how do you get more of this technology deployed at scale, and that was really the genesis for Beagle.
got it. And so did you start the business from scratch, or is this a roll-up of some sort, or how's the business been built?
That's a great question. So Beagle is not a roll-up. We've started from scratch and we've continued to grow organically just through hiring in particular markets where our insurance carrier partners feel that they have enough of a demand for us to have a full-time Beagle staff member or at least one full-time Beagle staff member in that market. So now Beagle operates across 17 states, all at the request of insurance carrier or broker related parties. Also, the different manufacturers in the space. They all suffer from the same challenge, and that is how do you get this technology out there to help the clients? And that is why we've grown the way we have from a business to consumer standpoint, and why we're in the geographic markets that we're in. And we do hire organically to do that. So we are not a plumbing roll-up company in that respect. We are doing this very specific thing and doing it in-house to help our partners.
Got it. And so can you describe what that is as compared to, what a regular plumber or plumbing business might be doing?
Exactly. Regular plumbing, just in general, tends to be reactive. Beagle's intent is to become a proactive and to be a proactive preventative maintenance plumbing company. So all we do is referred in work to help prevent leaks from occurring and causing damage ultimately at client properties. So carriers or brokers or clients themselves will call us and primarily express interest in getting an automatic water shutoff valve installed at the property. The carriers essentially ubiquitously across the market have now required that those products be flow-based systems, not just sensor-based systems. So that involves installing a professionally installed water monitor and automatic water shutoff valve, at which point we get referred to the client, or the client contacts us and says, my carrier says I should have one of these, or I want one because I'm a proactive preventative maintenance type individual. And then Beagle comes out and will help do that installation. And with that, we work with all carriers, we work with all brokers, and we work with all of the different manufacturers in this space because they are all just trying to solve for that last mile component.
Got it. And is this commercial, residential?
Yeah, it's primarily residential. The commercial technology at this point from a flow-based shutoff valve system is continuing to advance, but the cost analysis is still being proven out in that market. So Beagle does a little bit of that, but the vast majority of the work is standalone single-family residential as the technology is relatively mature in that space, as some of these manufacturers have been around for over 10 years or sometimes even 15 years.
Got it. And so in terms of like the carrier model, is it sort of like the carrot or the stick? Do they require it in order to get pricing? Do they encourage it so you can get better pricing? How does it work?
That's a great question. There was the Property Insurance Report had an article on this that I was in about 2 years ago, and that was carriers moving to a stick from the carrot, meaning that for many years there was an incentive for you to get a system installed, meaning we'll give you an X percentage discount on your premium if you can send us pictures of an installed valve and a paid invoice at your property. That was kind of the proof points that the carriers were looking at to evaluate their claims efficacy and the way that this would help reduce losses. Over time, at various coverage value thresholds and property types, maybe a seasonal secondary has a different value threshold than a primary owner occupied residence, you have requirements come into play. So as a condition of underwriting or as a condition of the policy, you have to have a flow-based automatic water shutoff valve installed, for example. Carriers in the high net worth space have continued to move toward those requirements at various dollar thresholds again. The standard lines carriers, in most instances, are either providing a small discount off of the premium or not doing the requirements at this point. But in all instances, the shift is moving more from a carrot to a stick, but the stick is now starting to be backed up by more data, in that historically you would be able to say, hey, here's a picture of my installed device and a paid invoice, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the system is on and active protecting the home. Great analogy is like a security system where there have been discounts or requirements on policies for those for many, many years, but there's no check that the alarm system was set prior to you leaving for vacation. So the true risk mitigation effect has led to a little bit of misinformed data from the output on how effective the technology is at claims prevention. So it's incredibly effective, especially when you look at how there have been reductions in claims, yet there is lack of proof around what percentage of devices are actually on and active in protecting those homes.
And so, what does the data show in terms of, if Beagle gets put on the case, so to speak, in terms of actual, installation and compliance versus, I don't know if they just send out a valve and say, find someone to install it, or what other models have been tried out there or are being attempted at the moment?
Yeah, great question. So one of the most interesting pieces around this is that even if a valve is not installed, but that the carrier has made a referral to Beagle, for example, to go evaluate a property to see what system would work best on that home, is you're actually able to find a leak in 30% to 40% of the instances just by arriving at the property. You're also helping educate homeowners as to where their existing shutoff valve actually is. Most people don't even know where that is. So in the instance that there would be a leak at the property, some clients wouldn't even know where to go turn the water off manually. So you're immediately creating a level of protection and education in that respect. So we're more than happy to do that. And like I said, about 30% of the properties we visit do have an active leak when we're there, and we can help them fix that issue. Then you get into the installation of the systems. And now the carriers historically have made the referral. They've taken that proof that I mentioned, which has historically been pictures of an installed device and a paid invoice, and made the assumption that that device is now on and active and protecting the home, maybe a year later when the policy comes up for renewal. What we see at Beagle now is about 30 to even 50%, depending upon our market in which carrier we're dealing with, of those systems are actually offline. And that is a home that is getting the policy credit or meeting the underwriting requirement for the carrier, yet what is actually happening at the property is different than what the data is showing. And so there's this major gap in not only getting the technology installed, which we've helped try to mitigate, but now ensuring that it maintains on and active and protecting the property post-installation. And that's where we're now starting to focus from a data standpoint. And like I said, it's like 30 to sometimes even 50% of those systems are actively offline and not protecting the home.
So I think going back to Flow, you had some technology that would give carriers real-time verification of device installation. So is that just not widely implemented, or it starts and then it somehow breaks in some way, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great point. Now, one of the wonderful things about all of the devices in this space is that they create and generate tons of data. Carriers ingest a lot of data. These are some points that are, maybe not the highest priority for them to ingest, or it's in the product roadmap and it's a high priority. Just when are they able to come to the ability to ingest that data and put that into their underwriting or meeting the requirements? Each carrier has a different kind of appetite for that data, and some of them are more aggressive with it than others and just wanting to receive it. Now, you can get real-time flow-based data across some of these systems ingested by the carrier. That tends to be way too much information for them. So in the most basic instance, the is it on is what you might be able to receive. Now, is it on and functioning, or what are the parameters that it's operating at? All of those various more nuanced points are kind of ingested variably by the carrier, depending upon what the manufacturer may make available or not make available to the carrier.
And so are there additional things you take on given that sort of, prioritization? I mean, it seems a little strange if the problem is as big as you described that they wouldn't prioritize that in some way. But as you said, I know, carriers do take on a lot of data and have a lot of things they're balancing.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most interesting pieces that you're seeing now is the beginning of, all of the speak around the beginning of a soft market cycle, or kind of being partway through the beginning of a soft market cycle. And in that instance, the dollars spent prioritized at the carriers are, in their minds, and I agree from a business standpoint, rightly spent at new customer acquisition or maintaining existing customer bases. Whereas in the past, the insured was more looking at how do I make sure I'm getting coverage or that I'm not getting dropped. Now there's less of a fear about getting dropped, or less of a fear about, maybe filing a claim so that you wouldn't get dropped in an instance where you thought you might have been dropped in the past. So the softening market, I think, skews where the dollars spend is at the larger carriers to make sure that they're maintaining competitiveness and capturing premium. Because even though it is maybe a $13 billion problem, are they able to continuously operate that or look at their book holistically and understand that maybe it's a loss leader for this specific peril, but that they're able to provide and capture a lot more premium across the holistic client book beyond just this peril. So I think a lot of it, when you look at how big of a problem set these carriers face, this is just kind of a prioritization exercise on where the dollars spent versus a true desire, because they will all rightly tell you, I believe, that they would love to have this information. They would love to have that data. It's just a matter of where does that fit within their roadmaps from a kind of a need and a prioritization standpoint.
So is success just measured based on claims reduction, or do you look at other things like, retention lift or just, installation volume or other things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The success is really, I think, shifted from kind of an evaluation phase over the last 10 years or so into a much more retention phase for the client base. Meaning, risk mitigation, I think, used to be viewed primarily as a way to save costs, but now it's being much more viewed as a way to generate revenue. So maybe because of the risk mitigation that a carrier is putting in place, getting automatic water shutoff valves installed, for example, doing other things Beagle does, like replacing supply lines, placing sensors across apartments, looking at replacing aged water heaters and other appliances, all of this kind of water preventative maintenance that you're able to actually more profitably write risk, as well as write risk you maybe otherwise wouldn't have written. So that includes new business. It also includes maintenance or maintaining renewals, and
Yeah.
risk mitigation actually a revenue generator versus just a cost savings. I think that's been the biggest shift in the last like 7 or so years, is that this is now revenue generation. It's starting to be viewed more as revenue generation versus just loss savings.
Got it. And so you alluded to a few other services that you offer. Is that also all primarily focused on residential?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we do some sensor deployments across large commercial or mid-sized commercial as well. That's just where the technology is most easily kind of balancing from a cost to deploy standpoint and what a benefit is, the cost benefit analysis on that. So sensors across 100,000 square foot office complex or something to that effect. Beagle does a variety of things around water damage mitigation, but all geared toward helping the carriers and their insureds, brokers also receiving that benefit as well, around preventing water damage. So sensor deployments, we do seismic gas shutoffs, we upgrade water heaters when that's necessary, pressure regulators. We can do water filtration when the client asks us about it, but it's not something that we're actively out there selling, just because we're very conscious of the client's relationship with the broker and the carrier as well, since that's whom we are an extension of when we're in front of the client.
Yeah, so I had someone on fairly recently who was looking at, non-wildfire fire, so similar to your, to that, but more from an actuarial point of view, not kind of what you're doing. I mean, is that like another area you could see yourself getting into at some point?
We're going to stick to water. So Beagle, water is such a big and pervasive problem, yet it's capable to be solved for the most part with technology and proactive service, as well as ongoing positive relationships between a service provider and the client, that this is where we're focusing. There are things we can do that are kind of ancillary to that because we're present physically in the home. So installing some other type of mitigation system, particularly if it's not trade specific, meaning we can plug in sensors, we can take pictures and evaluate various fire mitigation components. But what we're primarily focused on and will be focused on for the foreseeable future is just helping everybody not get a leak to ruin their day.
Yeah,
because it does ruin your day when it happens.
Yeah. So what's so you said you started as a litigator, and then you've been involved in a couple of operating businesses, but what's different about scaling like a physical services business like this compared to, say, a SaaS product or something like that? That's
a really great question. Yeah, the physical service component of this is the hardest part about it is managing the growing scale of it through kind of like the 0 to 1, 1 to 2 phase. We benefit really greatly from economies of scale, and that's primarily because of something as simple as drive time. So how easy is it for you to get from one side of Atlanta to the other, from one side of Los Angeles to the other, from one side of DFW to the other? And how many then systems can you install per day? So when you get into wanting to do thousands and thousands of deployments each year, like Beagle does, being able to make sure that you're doing the most per day really helps drive costs down for everybody from the client standpoint. It helps increase the purchasing power that Beagle provides across all of our sub suppliers. So ensuring that we're providing the best pricing back down to the client as our costs are lower, as well as just the general easy things like I said, drive time or responsiveness, given how long it takes to get from one side of town to the other. So making sure that you can continue to grow it and benefit from that growth over time is one of the really unique things that software just goes straight to margin as you get more clients, and your costs go up for sure, but not in the same way that they do when you're running a physical service business.
Yep.
So with that's probably one of the more interesting pieces around scaling this versus scaling something that's not as physically demanding in the market. That is something that we're always looking at as we continue to grow.
So bouncing around a little bit, but you mentioned the carriers can't necessarily prioritize ingesting the data, but what are you guys doing with the data?
Yeah, we are trying to help prevent further losses with the data. So there is a number of different manufactured products that when we install a system on a house, we're able to then see that alert data from those systems. We have a product called Watchdog that ingests that data. Now we're able to see if somebody has high pressure, if they have a small drip, if they're at risk of thermal expansion, how frequently they're getting shutoffs, if their device is even online or offline, all those points. And what we do with that information is then try to help the client solve that issue. A lot of the time, particularly if somebody is suffering from a small drip or a slow leak, if they can't find it easily, they might not believe that the valve is working properly. The valve 99% of the time is working properly, and you have that leak. It's just maybe more hard to find. Yeah. So in those instances, we're able to then try to help those clients prevent those losses and resolve those alerts. So that just leads back to us engaging with the clients to then drive another service visit to go help them replace leaky toilet flappers, fix angle stops behind ice machines, install pressure regulators, fix thermal expansion tanks. That's been happening more recently. So that's the kind of thing that we're utilizing the data for to help further make the properties more resilient from water damage and drive claims down for our carrier partners. So
everyone wants to know how, AI is being used in your business these days, or any business these days. So when you have lots of data, there's probably things you can do with AI. So what are you doing?
Yeah, this is actually really fun. We've been having a lot of fun with this lately. So with AI, we're doing a number of things. One is route optimization. As you asked earlier about the scaling of a physical services business, how do we utilize AI to make sure that we are most effectively able to serve our clients via route optimization? Maybe we would have offered a time 2 weeks out for a particular client, just given looking at a map, but now we can kind of readjust the schedule to better serve everyone, utilizing AI for that. Another one is looking at our operational efficiency. So as we are driving many, many trucks across the country, how are they spending, both on material pieces, also the hardware and the IoT that we're buying and installing, who's performing best across the team in that regard, and what kind of baselines are we expecting to ensure that we can continue to operate in such a way that keeps our costs down for our clients. Those are two key ways. And then there's others around the ability to look at customer service requests and really quickly provide correct and accurate data to many people that call us every day as quickly as we can. So that is we don't have any AI bots responding to people. What we have is, we'll ingest some questions if there's issues, or somebody has one of my teammates has a question about a system. We pose that to the team. We're having the team train models to be able to have basically an encyclopedia of knowledge around plumbing and the technology that we deal with to help more quickly and readily respond to customer questions in the field.
Got it. So maybe one last question. So Diane Delaney at PRMA has talked about the agent role evolving from policy placement to strategic risk advisor. Do you think agents have the tools, or potentially could in the future have the tools and knowledge to advise on home protection systems, or is that too aspirational?
I think that the agents need to have the right tools at their disposal to be able to help the clients with that. And they are absolutely evolving, like Diane said, to being a risk advisor or an agent, or a client particular trusted advisor. Now, having a trusted advisor, they can have a layer of knowledge around all of the different things their clients are going to be exposed to at any given day. But when you're an agent dealing with, particularly Diane's organization, dealing a lot with high net worth clientele, you're now dealing with complex auto, complex property, complex umbrella, dealing with various things, maybe even life, cyber, all these, a lot of different programs that you're writing for those clients. But being able to have a trusted partner that the agent can turn to is one of the areas that we try to be very present at Beagle for the agents. So when they understand that there's a potential water damage issue or the ability to mitigate a water damage issue at a property, that they can call us and say, hey, here's the circumstance. I told the client about this system or that system, but then really Beagle, like, you guys can run with it and provide that best experience for the client. So that's really where I agree entirely, but it's impossible for the agents to become subject matter experts on everything. And that's where we really try to help fill that knowledge gap.
All right, great. Well, Paul, this has been a great conversation. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Okay, no, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. And one of the things I didn't mention about AI is that the AI can't turn a wrench. So no matter what we got going on with AI in the back office, from our standpoint, no matter how smart the valves and the technology can get from their AI, you still got to put it on, and you still have to have somebody interacting with the client in a human standpoint when you're there to train them on the system that they're installing. And in that respect, we are utilizing AI as best as we can, but we've got a lot of plumbers driving around the country, meeting with insurance clients every day. And those folks, I'm pretty sure you don't want the bot interacting with, or it can't cut the pipe. So until that day comes, we'll be here to help.
All right, great. Well, Paul Vauquiez, founder and CEO of Beagle Services, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the Insurtech Leadership Podcast.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.